All right, good evening, council members. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order at 5 o'clock on July 5th, 2023 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. Roll call this evening, Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell,
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger,
Present.
Councillor Kennedy,
Present.
Councillor Prenger,
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray,
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
I'd like to also acknowledge our staff that is here in chamber. Do we have anyone online this evening? Yes. We have some staff members online as well. And there's a couple of members from the public in the gallery this evening. Tonight, we're holding our council meeting on lands and by the waters that we acknowledge are the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were among the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land in the past and shaping and strengthening this community now and in the future. As leaders of our community, we can learn much about ourselves, the land, and the water by learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture. We're committed to actions that move us toward a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If you have one, declare it now or when it arises in the meeting. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I need to declare an indirect pecuniary interest in council items 8.1 and 10.4 due to being employed by a charitable organization.
Thank you, Councillor. Public forum clerk, were there any registrants for the public forum? None this evening. Okay. And the adoption of minutes from regular and special meetings of council. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that the minutes of the council meetings held on June 19th, 2023 be adopted as printed.
Heard the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. No presentations this evening. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Seeing none. On to some consideration of bylaws. Facility booking policy bylaw. Clerk, please, will read the motion.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that the facility booking nonprofit policy bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-109.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, I'd like to defer this to January 1st to think about it again and at budget time and leave a decision till then. It's just.
Is that a motion, Councillor Kennedy?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Steinoff Gray. So the clerk, would you read the amended? Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to defer to, would that be the first meeting in January? So whatever that date is. Okay. Is there any more discussion? Oh, there's no discussion about deferring. All in favor of the motion?
Sorry.
We have a motion on.
Oh, so if we deal with this one.
Okay, it is debatable. So Councillor Hinchberger, you have a question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's more of a question about why can we not approve the policy but we want to defer its implementation. I don't know, we're like, separate the two from each other, and I'm trying to quickly go through my mind whether the policy actually makes any specific reference to when it starts. And to me, if it does not, then you can approve the policy, but the motion then is to defer its implementation till January 1, not to defer the whole matter to January 1. That's
So the recommendation on that motion, I believe, was to implement the actions within the policy on the 1st of September. So there was that slight deferral, but your point is well taken. There is and I might confirm with Councillor Kennedy, was it a deferral of the discussion on the policy or a deferral on the implementation date that was of primary importance for you?
Discussion on policy.
Okay, so it would be the deferral of the whole policy discussion. Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
I just wanted to seek clarification through you. If I'm correct, the bylaw seems to read that it comes into full force and effect upon its final passing. So perhaps I could just clarify.
So the bylaw does say it will come into full force and effect upon its final passing, but I think the policy actually says it won't come into effect till September 1st. So
So would the policy override the bylaw?
that's when the policy within the bylaw comes into effect.
And you'll have to clarify that as well. We can pass the policy, but the fees and the fee schedule amendment could be fulfilled the 1st of September. So the policy can be in effect that this is what's going to happen, but if you don't change the fee schedule, then those don't change until we actually change the fee schedule. But the intent of this motion is to defer the discussion and the implementation and everything at least until the first meeting in January. So, Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. I'll support our colleague Doug Kennedy on this one 100%. There seems to be a lot of people. We seem to get a lot of feedback after the last council, and I apologize I wasn't here at the last council, but there was a lot of feedback from certain groups. So I think it's proven that we just sort of delay this thing, whether it's January 1st or the 7th. I think it'd be a good idea. Take another look at this. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. My understanding, after a discussion with our CAO, that this is part of a broader initiative on the part of our director to fulfill a request that council had made previously of that team. And I think personally, I'd like to see the whole package of initiatives that team is going to bring forward to fulfill that request rather than piecemealing it. So I'd like to see them all proposed, all the proposals that that director has come up with at once rather than one at a time. So that's why I will support this deferral. And I would like it deferred until we have the rest of the proposals presented to us.
Good point.
Thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. Part of why I'm in support of a deferral, I could be flexible on the date of the deferral. I don't know if we have to keep it till January. But I wanted to make sure that we were applying a consistent approach because there's some other buildings where we give definitely subsidized rent rates to other folks and groups that fall into the category of nonprofit. And I would like to ensure that whatever policy I institute, it is consistent. So I haven't had a chance really to get my head around how that applies to those other venues, because I think it's still an applicable use case because you're using it for nonprofits purposes that's subsidized. So that's part of why I wanted the deferral.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just my understanding where that money was coming from was advertising. I do not remember, I'm not saying that's not true, but I thought that the advertising in the arenas and the sports field was at 25,000. I could be wrong, but I didn't remember it being this sort of thing to add to the budget. Just a thought. I'm not sure, maybe you can answer that, but.
Well, I think that speaks to Councillor Prenger's comments about seeing a broader picture of the package in its entirety rather than this part of the policy and that part of the policy, so. All right, we've had discussion. The motion is that we defer the facility booking policy bylaw for discussion till the first meeting in January. And is there some flexibility? Like sometimes the first meeting in January is an inappropriate meeting for policy discussion, but it will be in January, if that's all right, you know, for inclusion in the 2024 budget, however staff sees it the best fit in there, if that's appropriate. That's all.
Budget usually is presented before January, so if you wanted as part of the budget consideration in that context, it would likely be in September. Doesn't necessarily mean that the policy needs to be inserted, but the discussion around it could potentially happen during the department's business plan presentation. But I would also offer that through the direction related to the $25,000 in savings or funding and revenue that community services was directed is for this budget year. So just being aware that if she's reporting back and things are shifted to a future budget consideration, that'll just be part of the ongoing discussion about what happened in this budget year.
All right, so we have a motion to defer the, we need to have a conversation with Councillor Kennedy then regarding the timing. If we want to have the policy discussion, like keeping in, the CAO just said that we'll have our budget presentation prior to the 1st of January. It would be appropriate, I would think, to have the policy discussion leading into that budget discussion rather than sort of an add-on later on. Is
Yeah, it's fine. Sorry.
A recommendation on his, an amendment to a friendly amendment? Do you mind if we ask you to move that up to an earlier date?
Later in
October?
September, first of October, is that okay?
Okay,
How about the 2nd of October, it's the first Monday in October?
Is
all
that-
right,
is that
so
enough?
meeting in October. We had Councillor Steinoff, Gray, and then Councillor Prenger.
I just wanted to clarify what our CIO said through you, Chair. Based on the fact that we're going to be making these decisions on budget and this policy will directly affect those outcomes, I would just like to understand what date those presentations and preparations will have to take, because we can't ask staff to pivot their planning if we wait too late. So I'd like to understand what that date should be so that we don't adversely impact the 2024 budget, because we know what challenges we faced. And we didn't want last minute again. So I'd like to make sure we don't end up in that box. The other clarifying point that I had is if it was meant to play catch up for this year's budget based on the implementation, like based on our decisions as a council, if we end up being over budget at a certain point, how do we address that? Just a clarification. Thank you.
So in the director's report from last meeting, she notes a little bit difficult to gauge how much could potentially be brought in revenue for the remainder of this year. So it was an estimate of it, which was around $10,000, right? So it's potentially how much could be brought in if this policy shift was approved and implemented for September 1st. So that I'm saying that's all the reporting back to council to say, if we don't meeting our goal here in this area, this is, you know, potentially one of the reasons why, is this was one of the strategies to try to receive revenue.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Is it possible to add another friendly amendment to Councillor Kennedy's deferral, directing staff to bring that back when we have the whole picture rather than, like, I guess if you want to keep the date, that's fine, but also bring the whole, like the other proposals to, that go along with this one for this initiative.
In October.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to see the whole picture. So even if it comes back in October, if I don't see the whole picture, I'm still gonna ask for a deferral then, so.
Okay, staff has the gist of the, is there any more comments regarding whether there's a broader picture? We would like to see the highest level picture that we can see. That's all. That's the question. All right, so we still have the motion to defer till October 2nd, you said, Councillor Stewart? That was that the date?
Monday is the second,
Okay,
because we're changing
Just put it in.
forward.
in October. All right, any more discussion? All in favor of the deferral? Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Move into committee of the whole. Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion, return to council.
All in favor? That's carried. So I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting for the corporation of the municipality at 5:16 on July 5th. Roll call remains the same. Are there any additions, amendments, or deletions to or from the agenda? I'd ask you to disclose any pecuniary interest as it arises, or if you know it now. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I need to declare a pecuniary interest in 6.1C as an employee of a charitable organization.
Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
6.1C as I sit on the 6.1C, as I sit on the board of directors for the Blues Festival, and 6.2. Which is advertising.
Clerk has the adoption of minutes motion, please.
Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Mike Kinchberger, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on June 19th, 2023 be adopted as printed.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Any items for discussion from the council meeting? None? Okay. Reports from our municipal staff from corporate services. Vesting of failed tax sale property. We have a resolution, please, clerk.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that committee of the whole recommend that council authorize the vesting of the vacant property with roll number 4108-220-002-11700. 4 more zeros in accordance with section 379 7.1 of the Municipal Act, and further that council authorize staff to write off taxes in the amount of $39,015.22 on lands vested by the municipality for the vested properties listed in Schedule A in accordance with section 354(2)(a) and 3 of the Municipal Act.
So you've heard the resolution. Are there any questions? All in favor? That's carried. 6.1B election sign bylaw review. Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that committee of the whole recommend that council receive report legislative services 2023-14, and that staff be directed to review the election sign bylaw prior to the 2026 municipal election and direct staff to investigate and promote environmentally friendly election signs in future elections, and further that the municipality demonstrate leadership and reduce with a view to eliminating the use of similar temporary signs as a method of communication.
Heard the resolution. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Community Investment Grant Policy Legislative Services. Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell. Oh, Beth's
Yeah.
leaving. Beth is leaving. That's what I just
Can't move
thought.
Beth.
She was still sitting there. Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Bill Stewart, that committee of the whole recommend that council pass a bylaw to adopt the updated community investment grant policy, including the application form and statement of accountability.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Come on back in. At fault false alarm bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that committee of the whole recommend that council pass the at-fault false alarm bylaw as presented in report Legislative Services 2023-13, and further that council amend the rates and fees bylaw to include fees for at-fault false alarms, $300 for a second occurrence and $500 for subsequent.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. This is something that staff brought forward with the endorsement of the Police Service Board. It's something that doesn't seem like it should be a huge issue, but when you tally the numbers, the amount of savings we can get by encouraging people to step up and fix their broken alarms is quite significant. Statistically, an operations 2 call, which is a false alarm, will be about 1.4 hours per hour multiplied. So we end up with a fairly significant savings. Just to leave you with one final number, there is locations in our municipality that are setting upwards of 20 false alarms in a year. So when you multiply that cost out, I think this bylaw would go a long way in patching that up.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through your mayor. And for those who might think it's overly draconian, the bylaw does provide a mulligan or a once off for the first time. So it's not like you're going to punish somebody immediately.
We have a goal.
So this bylaw, if I'm correct, is very similar to that of the false alarm calls that the fire department established a number of years ago successfully. So you've heard the motion. All in favor of the motion, and that's carried. Okay, so the next one, the draft procedural bylaw and governance review implementation timeline is provided for information. Our legislative services manager has provided the initial draft of our procedural bylaw. And when you read it, it's in its rough form, but that's why it's there in that manner, because it hasn't been smoothed off and shined up, but it provides opportunity for council members to offer any comments this evening and comments going forward. So we'll just whirl once around the table. If there's a broad overview, or we're not so much looking for the specific things that we want to, if there is a specific item that is missing or that you want to highlight, that's fine. But we're not going to bore down into it tonight. You will be responsible for offering your recommendations to staff, and we will see it tidied up significantly when legislative services has opportunity to go through them. So Deputy Mayor, any comments that you'd like to make regarding the draft governance review bylaw?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I think by and large, it's actually quite good. I think the thought process of having sort of a mock meeting will be very helpful to see how we can test run it. But by and large, I suspect some of this will be as it comes, sort of some issues that have to be ironed out. But I think the process of having something that's transparent and consistent will be a good way to run meetings.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Not much to add other than I think this is long overdue, and I think it'll be a big improvement once it's implemented.
Councillor Stanoff Gray?
I share the thoughts of my fellow councillors. I like that it lays out how we're going to proceed with everything. It makes it very clear. We know where to go to. I was a little nervous about no food, as some of us like to eat, but we can deal with that in our discussions.
And we, yeah, and seriously, we can. Those are discussions about decorum and procedure. Like those discussions will be held. Councillor Kennedy, please.
Through the chair, just no, I'm looking forward to the individual meetings that we're going to have. I guess with the leadership team and feedback we're going to be able to give. And there's I have some questions and comments about different things that are in it, but I won't bring it up tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Councillor Kennedy took the words right out of my mouth.
Councillor Pranger.
I have nothing additional to add tonight.
Councillor Stewart.
Well, I have a few things to add, but we'll take them up on individual. Who do we feed back to if we want to do it outside of the June 10th? That would be Jennifer. Thank you. And I worry about overall, we have an act that we have to follow under. You're adding a lot of things to an act that we're already sort of governed by an act, and you're adding a lot of extras. I'm not always in favor of all those extras, but you'll be hearing from me through the various meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I appreciate that there's been a move towards plain language. I think that that's really important for transparency for our community. The only thing that I'm going to mention is the piece that I liked was about recorded votes, where it doesn't always start with me. So there's quite a lot of things that I do like in here. I have some concerns as well, and I'll share those. But I think it's a really great start, and I'm excited to see us implementing a bit of a different structure.
And I've appreciated your study of the procedural bylaw, because it really is our bylaw. We get to craft it to facilitate meetings that are efficient and productive for our own community. And as Councillor Stewart said, you know, we're governed by a whole bunch of acts. Some of them are specific enough, others are a little vague in the like the particulars. But Deputy Mayor Clark, I'm terrified of a mock meeting. I have no idea what path we'll be going down. And excuse me, how are we supposed to do that anyway? Well, I hope you've got your pen ready, Clark, because can't do that. We need to do it this way. So thank you for that input. It's very helpful. Number F, delegation of powers and duties, signing officers bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanagh, that committee of the whole recommend that council approve the delegation of powers and duties signing officers bylaw.
I've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Sale and disposition of land policy update. Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that committee of the whole recommend that council repeal bylaw 2008-141, being the disposal of land bylaw, and that council approve of the updated sale and disposition of land policy as presented, and further that the policy be adopted by bylaw.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All in favor? That's carried. Pregnancy and parental leave for council members update. Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the committee of the whole recommend to council that resolution 02-2019-12, being a motion to adopt policy number GG 6.13 be repealed, and further that council approve and adopt by bylaw the updated pregnancy and paternal leave for council members policy as presented.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through your chair. And please correct me if I'm wrong, someone. My reading of this policy, my understanding is that a pregnancy leave or mat leave is expected to be 5 months or less. It only applies if it's 20 weeks or less. I'll start there. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the direction of the policy.
Okay. I'm just curious, who in the right mind wants to take 5 months only? What happens if you go over 5 months? There's nothing in the policy to say if you want to take a longer mat leave, this is what happens.
CAO, would you like to speak to that, please?
Sure. Thank you for the question through you, Mayor. The requirement for having a policy around pregnancy leave for members of council is relatively new. So that came into effect in 2018. Before that, there was nothing in legislation that spoke to members of council being off for pregnancy leave. So in my perspective, this was a way of the legislature saying, you know what, if you are looking to invite more people to the table, this is probably something that you need to have in place. At the same time, it's a bit of a balance between representation. So people are electing you to represent their interests at a council table. So being off for the same amount of time, a year and a half, when your term is only a 4-year term, is likely where the 20-week number comes out of. Because it's not the same as an employee. You're not an employee for the purposes of the legislation and that type of a situation. It's you're wearing a different hat, but at the same time, trying to be respectful of the fact that there are different people with different needs that we want to welcome to a council table overall. So you want to have that process available that says this is our policy. At the same time, the section 259 of the Municipal Act also speaks to vacancies on council. Council can exempt any member of council if they choose. If they don't approve that by resolution, if you're more than 3 months, so like consecutive meetings, you are absent, your seat is automatically vacant and council has to fill that vacancy. But they can also decide. So in this situation, if they were just decide something beyond what it is that this policy allows for, they could also do so by resolution of council.
So could you tell me who established the 20-week number? Was that a municipal number or was that a statute act or number, or where did that number come from, if you would please?
It came from the majority of municipalities with the policy, so it's the general best practice at this point in time.
Follow up, Counselor?
Yes, thank you. So does our parental or pregnancy leave policy need to clarify what to do if you want more than 5 months off? Or are we just supposed to automatically know that you revert to the other policy? It's not clear. So if I was just reading that policy, it feels like there's something missing.
Yep, go ahead.
I would say that a clerk pays pretty close attention to the timeframes associated with absences. So if there was a council member that had reached a timeframe that either was going to put them close to the 3 months if it wasn't the parental leave, but just what's in the act under section 259, they're going to reach out. And even if they were not to get a hold of that member of council, they're going to come forward to council to say something needs to be done or else you will have a vacant seat. So in my experience, your clerk is paying very close attention to making sure that there isn't a accidental vacancy on council.
Just to follow that point, if, would it be appropriate to address Councillor Prenger's concern just by having a little line in the bottom of that? At the end of 20 weeks, the affected councillor would refer to policy, whatever it is that talks about asking for an absence from council. Is there a line we can put in that says when your 20 weeks is run out, if you want extra, then you got to do this other policy? Not that the clerk isn't very capable, that's not what I'm saying, but it just makes it very explicit in the policy that if they ended 20 weeks and the council member wants a longer time, then you do this. Is that an appropriate addition, or is it not worthy? Just what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that would be certainly the council member could reach out, but if there was say they were ill for some reason at the end of it, it's actually up to council. Council's the one that would have to make that choice. So I wouldn't put the onus on the individual who's absent. I would be pushing this back to a council table, which again, I would say comes back to the clerk, because it will be the clerk who is bringing that forward to say council needs to do something at this point. So we can add something in there, but I would say it's still going to come through the fact that Legislative Services is tracking this and realizes that there's a deadline.
Councillor Stewart and then Hinchberger and then Kennedy, please.
Yeah, we had a situation last term where one of our council members missed 3 consecutive months and we extended it. And just to give you some latitude, if you even show up to one meeting by Zoom, You can go another 3 months. You literally could do 4 meetings and be here the whole year. That's the way the act sort of says. It's consecutive, correct, Jennifer? You just have to show up to one meeting and everything else. And I just want to thank the group because, you know, Councillors Kennedy and I, if we ever want to become new fathers, we get this privilege. I knew Liz would laugh. We get this privilege too. So thank you very much for considering us older gentlemen. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I was going to just make the case for not adding a line because then you get into where do you stop? Because I asked the CAO offline, how about the special circumstance where either a mayor or a deputy mayor is one taking advantage of parental and pregnancy leave? And clearly there's a whole different context there about the role that they play in the functioning of municipal government. So I think there's always going to be a case where you're going to need to know various levels of statute and regulation and bylaw. And that's why we have a clerk to know the ins and outs of that.
Councillor Kennedy, please, and then Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just you know, Councillor Heat, like was mentioned before, that's all I was gonna say, on 2 separate occasions was advanced 3 more months. I think the clerk can confirm that, right? And council passed that.
Yep, Deputy Mayor, please.
I just wanted to actually acknowledge the work that's gone into this. I think I have a house full of kids, so it probably is not going to apply to me, but I think the fact of the matter is it does become more inclusive when you're having policies that encourage others to come to the table. So I hear what Councillor Pringer says, and I acknowledge the fact that perhaps there's a long way to go, but it's a starting point. So thank you for the work that's gone into that.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'd like to echo what Deputy Mayor Clark said about it being inclusive. One of the things I've seen other municipalities do as well is have policies around infant in arms. What they're usually called, but being able to come to meetings with with an infant, which we have been lucky enough to have in our, and whether something like that may alleviate some of the concerns around length of time, especially if you are a primary parent or a breastfeeding parent to be separated, but still be able to come to the meetings. I don't know whether that would address any of some of your concerns or not, or whether it's, I mean, I don't know if we need to be explicit about something like that.
I think the CAO kind of laid out the nature and the terms of this particular policy. If you want a different one that talks about parental practices within the context of a council meeting, that's a different sort of policy that we would establish following that, councillor. So, all right. So we've have the motion on the floor regarding pregnancy and parental leave. All in favor of the motion, please, and that is carried. Other areas of responsibility, 6.2A, advertising revenue generation policy, recreation and community programs. Clerk, please.
Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that committee of the whole recommend that council approve the advertising revenue generation policy at the July 10th, 2023 council meeting as presented.
So this will be for discussion only this evening, and then we would present the motion for vote next week. So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion regarding this? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'm wondering whether we have the director on with us tonight.
No.
Oh, okay. I have a couple of questions. So some other policies that I've looked at have separated out advertising, donation, naming rights, and sponsorship. And so this policy to me looks specifically to mostly to advertising. This is just a definition from City of Oshawa, which is a straightforward purchase of space on property and assets for a pre-established rate for a specific period of time. Are we looking at a policy that also looks at things like naming rights and sponsorship so a sponsorship in their definition is like sponsoring a program, like a free swim or a skate. And then a naming rights is like being able to name a room after you or a facility or the Zamboni or whatever, as opposed to like purchasing this square of advertising. Is that something that is coming, or is that something we're trying to fit in within this existing policy?
So through the chair, a great question, Councillor Blackwell. You touched on some points that are our staff is currently working on the advertising and partnership program that we're bringing to council in the near future. And it contains things like rink boards, wall advertising, swims and skates, the ice resurfacer signage, risers in the community centers. So we are working on that. The one that you did mention was the naming rights. That's not one that we have tackled to date. I'm not saying we aren't going to, but it's not currently in the literature that we've bringing forward tonight. But we can take it back for consideration for additional work.
Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, did you have a question? Okay. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. The other ones I've noticed in some of the other policies as well was restrictions on political advertising, gambling or pornography in addition to tobacco and alcohol. That'd be something that I would support looking at. The other concern or question I had was where would someone go if they had a complaint? So I know that there's advertising standards, but if someone saw an advertisement that they felt didn't adhere to advertising standards, would the process come to the municipality or would they be directed to like the advertising standards themselves?
So I'm going to start the answer on that one, Ms. Kiefer, and you can come in because like I have to acknowledge that there was some pushback on the Scottish Festival advertisement. It's really big. Like it was a play.
I know.
It could be funny, could be offensive. And the question that I heard behind the question was, who is the moral police behind, like, yes, so if there's very specific standards, that's one thing, but it's the nuance and what is offensive, what is appropriate. So I will now that we're really bogged down in this, do you have a really good answer to that?
Well, through the chair, I'm not sure if it's a good answer, but the honest answer is that anything would go through the Director of Community Services. So she and or their designate or the senior leadership team would certainly review any slogan or phrase that was submitted that was maybe iffy or a gray area, but certainly it would be staff, I would think, that would make that determination.
Very good. So we have a motion and before us regarding advertising revenue generation policy. All in favor of the recommendation that it comes back for approval on the 10th of July. And that's carried. County Council update. Well, we have our County Council meeting tomorrow. No, we don't. There's nothing there that explodes as you just have to hear it. That's none of that tonight. So. All right, we're at the consent agenda. The term items listed underneath are considered routine and will be enacted under one motion as the matters arising. Are there any issues or items here that you would like pulled for conversation or inclusion in a different agenda? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, 7.2A quarterly procurement reports. It's the report number 69472 Mount Forest Avenue servicing development project. I'd like a little more explanation of what development's actually happening. It'll probably have to be in a closed meeting. We have spent incredible amount of money on various projects that haven't really materialized, like the one at Sobeys North and the one behind No Frills. I'm not quite sure, but we're going to spend well over $1 million servicing that road, and I haven't seen any development. So I think it's time that we ask the staff to give us a report, probably in private, what they're planning to do, because I don't want to spend $1 million and have a nice looking road with nothing attached to it, and who's paying for it. So if you wouldn't mind actually going back to the development team and asking to produce a report, I think would be appropriate for us instead of investing more money. Right now, we have $5 to $10 million out there that's producing absolutely no revenue for us. Thank you.
No, I just want to declare another interest.
Deputy Mayor,
So nice when it's not. You want to sit on.
I'll just sit outside. 7.1A. Gonna go back up.
7.1A. Okay. There was, I'm sorry, Councillor Hinchberger, you had your hand up regarding a report.
Yes, I'll be brief. It was 7.1 alpha. I just wondered, I should ask this question outside of the meeting. I apologize, but do we have in our policy, our practices where we put out a notification to the public on what noise bylaw exemptions we've approved? Because I've become aware of at least one that council approved recently that the neighbors in the community weren't exactly aware of. And on the flip side, the organization that applied for it went well beyond the exemption that was with provisions of it. So in speaking to a few of those citizens, one of the things they brought up is it would be nice to know when these things are happening, because it could also impact whether or not people are properly, say, calling bylaw enforcement or the OPP for something that might have already had an approval. So just we can take this offline afterwards, but it's a communication thought I had, and unless there is an answer.
It is a valuable communication exercise. Can you speak to the process, the policy, how that works, clerk, please?
So when each person is provided with their noise bylaw exemption, they are asked to notify all of the neighbors, and they are asked to notify, put a announcement out somehow. So if the event, let's say that could be their announcement that they're advertising the event, but we do ask them to, talk to your neighbors, make sure your neighbors know.
Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, do you have a follow-up on that?
Thank you. That raises actually a wrinkle that I hadn't considered. I can understand probably the importance of putting some accountability on those who are applying to do it. Now raises a question for me about where's the compliance? But again, I got some things to think about.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I was just wondering if I could pull from the consent agenda, 7.4 Foxtrot, Juliet, and Oscar, all different communities with amendments to the Highway Traffic Act, just for a brief discussion.
At this point in time, go ahead.
Thank you very much. They're all very similar, so they all have basically the same wording, and it's a request that the Ontario government consider amending section 2051 of the Highway Traffic Act to permit municipalities to set up automated speed radar or speed enforcement in areas that they deem to be high risk, not just restricted to the areas that are already prescribed as school safety zones or community safety zones. So we all know speed kills. We also know we have an issue here in the summer with individuals who choose to either drive aggressively or go above the speed limit. And we also know that we don't necessarily have enough officers on the road available at all times to catch every speeder. And so with this change, if the Ontario government were to go through with it, it would enable us to start an automated program. And that automated program would also be self-funding because it would collect money back in and then be used to pay for those same devices.
So is this the sort of communication that you would like to add our support to by endorsing their resolutions? Would you like to ask council to direct staff to prepare a motion in support of these as well?
That's a wonderful idea. Thank you very much.
The motion won't be for tonight. It'll be for a future meeting. Like it's just, it's the expression. So that will come back in a future meeting then, because the motion says that the staff will fulfill all the requirements that we talk about here in administrative fashion. Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just want to say how much I support what my fellow councillor has recommended. The other piece to that I don't know if this is the appropriate time, so if I'm remiss, please tell me. CAO, I'm looking at you directly. I do think as a committee, we have to figure out traffic calming measures because it is kind of becoming an epidemic in our community as we have people using different areas as raceways to get ahead of other traffic. And as we develop further and there's more and more traffic based on the way our infrastructure was developed, I think it's something we have to look at and potentially inclusion for an ad hoc committee on traffic calming. I would recommend that's something we need to look at. And so maybe we could look at that at the same time as Councillor Kavanaugh's motion.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you through you. I'm usually the traffic safety person, so I'm all in on that. But I was just gonna, this is a really quick comment on 7.2A, which is the quarterly procurement report. The capital status report over $1 million includes the budget. Is it possible to amend the format for the contracts over 50,000 to also include the budget instead of just the budget line item? I'm like, it includes, yeah, like it includes how much the contract is, but it doesn't include what was initially budgeted, and it's a bit cumbersome sometimes to go back and forth with my budget document. I'm happy to do it, but it's just a very small request.
I would direct my conversation to our Director of Corporate Services. Roxana, could you respond to that comment from Councillor Blackwell, please?
Yes, so through you, Chair, yeah, we can add a budget amount. It's not always like for like. Sometimes the budget amount may not directly translate into the contract value. There's certain projects, there's engineering components as well, but we can certainly add an extra column in there. Yeah.
Thank you, Director. All right, seeing no further, Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. I don't think anyone brought up Echo Township of Bonneville pause proposed changes to the PPS, but I do think that the provincial policy statement, specifically speaking to heritage and agricultural matters, there's some things there that I think we need to look at based on the way that applies and the way our actual infrastructure works, like with our road allowances. Obviously, increasing density is important, so going medium and high density. But when you're building that density onto roadways that don't meet the minimum standard for a roadway, it adds a lot of complication. And I think that's something that we should be looking at.
All right, Clerk, final motion for the Committee of the Whole, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, if she comes back in.
Oh.
Wait for her.
Yeah, come back, you're making a motion.
There you go. I'll make it for somebody else. Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that this Committee of the Whole adjourn at 5:52 p.m.
All in favor? All right, we're back in council again. So we will be receiving recommendations from Committee of the Whole and giving them first, second, and third readings where appropriate. So arising from the consent agenda, Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated July 5th, 2023, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions, except for 7.4 EF, 7.4 EJ, and 7.4 EO. And we're going to bring back a motion to a future meeting for those.
All in favor? That's carried. 10.2 vesting of failed tax sale property. Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that council authorize the vesting of vacant property with roll number 4108220002117004 more zeros in accordance with section 379.71 of the Municipal Act. And further, that council authorize staff to write off taxes in the amount of $39,015.22 on lands vested in the municipality for the vested properties listed in Schedule A in accordance with section 354(2)(a) and 3 of the Municipal Act.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 10.3 election sign bylaw review.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that council receive report Legislative Services 2023-14 and that staff be directed to review the election signs bylaw prior to the 2026 municipal election and direct staff to investigate and promote environmentally friendly election signs in future elections. And further, that the municipality demonstrate leadership and reduce with a view to eliminating the use of similar temporary signs as a method for communication.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Oh, all in favor? And that's carried. 10.4 Community Investment Grant Policy Bylaw.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the Community Investment Grant Policy Bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-110.
Heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 10.5, the at-fault false alarm bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the at-fault false alarm bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2023-111.
Heard the motion, is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. 10.6, delegation of powers and duties bylaw.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pringer, that the delegation of powers and duties signing officers bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-112.
Heard the motion, is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 10.7, sale and disposition of land policy bylaw.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark. It's the sale and disposition of land policy bylaw, and it be bylaw 2023-113.
You've heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 10.8, pregnancy and parental leave for council members policy bylaw.
So this is moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, and it will be bylaw 2023-114.
You've heard the motion, sort of. Is there any discussion? Councillor Prenger?
Thank you for seeing my hand this time, Chair. I just wanted to say that I think this initiative is definitely an important one, and I am glad to see it, and I am glad to see the work that went into it, and appreciate it. However, my comments from before sort of stand. I just wanted to clarify. I hear what the CAO said, that it's based, the 5 months or 20 weeks is based on what is sort of standard practice right now in other municipalities. And I actually think you said best practice at the moment. However, I don't think we necessarily just have to be a follower, and we can set standards. We can do better than what the standard practice is. We can be an example of best practice and support women who want more than 5 months by not shaming them by asking for more than 5 months, because we're implying they should only take 5 months. So I would have liked to see more than 20 weeks, but I support the fact that we're doing this and that this is being implemented, and we can always review and revise in the future if we think it's appropriate. So thank you.
So we've heard the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. 11, member of council general announcements. I'm going to go first again. So today there was the announcement made by our Minister of Energy, the Honorable Todd Smith, of the pre-development work for a new nuclear build at the Bruce site. In effect, it will become Bruce C. They haven't named it, but it's the next one down the list. Just a minute, Bruce. I'm sorry. It's not Alpha Charlie. Alpha Bruce Charlie.
Called the phonetic alphabet.
Yeah, but what's
Alpha and Bravo, and Charlie would be.
yeah,
it would
Charlie.
be.
So it'd be Bruce Charlie. There we go. So that we have some sort of messaging as people ask us, like, what does that mean? The timelines for completion are difficult to establish. The pre-development work could take 5 years because the Bruce site has been assessed time and time again. Both the provincial and federal governments are well aware of the capabilities. They're well aware of the community investment. They're well aware of a lot of things here that they would not be on a green field. Having said that, there is some discussions to go between provincial and federal counterparts. It could be 5 years, it could be 7 years, it could be 10 years before there's a shovel there. But the pre-consultation process will start soon. The engagement with communities, with our Indigenous neighbors, the background and the paperwork will start. In the big picture, it will start soon. That doesn't mean tomorrow or next week, but it will start soon. Another announcement will be made tomorrow in Darlington regarding energy profile and the portfolio in the province. So the provincial government is announcing pretty clearly their energy production direction for the next number of generations. I commented that each one of the neighboring communities, Saugeen Shores, ourselves here in Kinloss, County of Bruce, the County of Grey, we all have particular roles to play as local municipal governments. There continues to be a meeting planned in September regarding the land inventory. Councillor Hinchberger and Councillors Blackwell, we talked about that, and it's been planned with Bruce County staff to assess and establish where we might have appropriate lands for a housing inventory. With this announcement today, the importance of that meeting has skyrocketed regarding direction of community development within the village of Tiverton, along the lakeshore, within the urban boundaries of Kincardine itself. The discussions that we will have starting in September over the next year, 2 years are enormous. And I want each one of us to, if you have opportunity to talk to our CAO and say, what does this mean? If we do this, what does our official plan say? What does our boundary settlement say? What do the guidelines say? Where are we heading? How are we growing? Where do institutions and industry and commercial and retail, like how do we protect it? How do we grow it? How do we maintain progressive, fruitful development? There are urban settings that I don't want to see Kincardine become like that. There are beachfront communities that I don't want us to stay like that either. There's balance in there somewhere. So we all need to express our opinions, but it can't just be, I think we need to do this. There's background that each one of us have to do. The balance and the placement of all our zoning opportunities, our construction development opportunities, but also, no, let's not go there. We have to be pretty firm about this is the direction that we want our municipality to go. So please take opportunity in the next month, 6 weeks, 2 months to speak with planning staff or our CAO, get a sense, talk to each other and say, what's your sense of where our community goes? This indications have employment opportunities. The first 5 years, it's 500 people, 1,000 people, because it's planning. Odds are a lot of them will not work out of their house from Kincardine, they'll be from away. But when construction starts, there'll be another 2,500 or 3,000 employees plus minus that will be working here, and we will be ready for them. And it's our job, as past councils have done, to prepare for that. So I'll provide opportunity if there's any response to the announcement today that you would like to offer. There'll be opportunity for that. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. What brings to mind through you is that we're trying to put together a deal for water for Bruce Power, and this could really affect it because all of a sudden they're expanding from an A, B, and maybe a C. We're going to have to take a look at this long term, especially if the community grows. We only have so much water in our system without the expense costs of adding another water treatment plant. So I know that they're going through discussions right now. So we're going to have to get an indication fairly quickly from the government is how much more water they're going to require. And do we have enough to even do it? Or do we just sort of basically tell them that you're going to get this amount of water and that's it? And you're out of luck for anything more. So part of our discussion with the water will have to be with this new development in plan. Thanks.
There will be a lot of discussions, absolutely, about a lot of aspects that are taking on new dimensions that we will have to prepare for. Councillor Hinchberger, let's start with you. Do you have any philosophical or any other views at this point that we need to share or?
Through you, Mayor, and I'll say never, but that wouldn't be true. It's been a surprise today, a pleasant surprise. A lot will depend on how it plays out, how it's managed. Just to put it in perspective is like, there's a project, basically a set of projects to increase current site output to like 7,000 megawatts. So the announcement today was talking about up to 4,800 additional megawatts of electrical power. So if you want to use the terminology Bruce A, Bruce B, Bruce C, I would say it's like Bruce C and then some. Just however many, it's just I mean, here we just go from seeing, you know, a small modular reactor being proposed and in development at Darlington of 300 megawatts. And we're talking something that's 15 times that in size. Just my mind's still trying to grapple with all the possibilities.
Councillor Prenger, you're going to be busy.
I sure am. My team at work is very busy. And even I was surprised by the announcement today. So pleasantly surprised, but yes.
The Minister of Energy called up on Friday and he said, by the way, just thought I would let you know. So it was a surprise to us as well too. So the Honorable Lisa Thompson, Minister of Agriculture and Food, remember down at Inverhuron, Rory? I'm not sure if you remember the conversation. She said, I'm going to have another little announcement about some economic development for you later on. And I was thinking like 20,000 for community gardens or something. It's a little bigger number than that. Councillor Stewart, you all right? Are you heading up? Councillor Blackwell?
Thank you. Through you, I just want to thank all of the hardworking staff, including some of our lovely summer students who took part in the Canada Day celebrations.
But we're just talking about.
Oh, we're specifically. oh,
Yeah, we're
okay.
pretty specific down there.
I would just like to say,
Yeah,
through you, I won't get onto that. Apologies. We'll get back in the game here. Certainly, I was pleased by the announcement today. I was also pleased by the commitment of the Ontario government to consult with our local First Nations and ensure that that we are all willing hosts for this. So,
Councillor Kennedy?
Oh, no, just that it was exciting news and I think we deserve it. This is the best place to be. There'll be no fight back. People around here get it. And this is the right move. Best place in the province to be, Kincardine. That's my opinion.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Through you, Chair. I'd just like to echo a lot of the comments I've heard around the room. It's unbelievably exciting news, and I think it speaks to the relationship we've been trying to foster with nuclear and the strategic goals we've even set. And we see their investment in our community as we invest in them. So, you know, I just think it's a really exciting time for us in the area, and I can't wait to see what it brings as long as we have traffic calming.
You just had to say it. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I concur with the rest of council. This is fantastic news. It's wonderful for our community and it's also wonderful for our environment. It's a huge step towards a future with generations that my kids' kids will get to enjoy.
Deputy Mayor, you get to be the swing around because we'll start with you first if you have any comments about Bruce Power, but then we'll start other general announcements and we'll go back down the other way again, okay? You get both and.
Okay, so with regards to Bruce Power, it's been fantastic news. I don't think there's anything that can take away from that announcement today. So that's about it for me, Bruce Power. General announcements, Blues Festival, July 14th to 16th. That's it.
Thank you very much through the chair. This weekend in Tiverton, the Old Diggers are having a mush ball tournament and they're still taking team signups. If you're interested in coming out and playing some mush ball, by all means, information's on the website. I stand corrected. I was not aware, but it has been canceled. My apologies.
Through you, Chair, I just thought I would acknowledge all the hard work that went in, I'm sure through staff. I'm pretty sure the Tiverton Agricultural Society was involved as well in the parade that took place for Canada Day in Tiverton. I was also super impressed by the breakfast that the Lions put on to help raise money for our splash pad. So I'd just like to give a big thank you to the host community and actually all the people that you don't normally see in Tiverton for a parade. There was a really good turnout. So just my appreciation for everyone's inclusion in that event.
Through the chair. Okay, the Ballas, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Balla family from Teeswater, but the only night I could book them for a Lions Club fundraiser was Monday, August 14th, one day in the summer they had open. Unfortunately, that's a council meeting and I'm kind of hoping it's a quick one. Because and I'll let you know I'm not going to be here because I'm going to be at the Legion organizing this. And I have tickets and it's to raise money, and you can buy tickets from the Lion Club members, myself, and a couple of businesses downtown. Okay, I know, Mike. And the other things the Lions Club's doing, it's a big event that Jennifer Pranger is going to talk about. Just remind you, July 27th. Okay, it's a fun day at the arena, all kinds of activities for kids. Saturday, July 27th. I know Jennifer is going to add to that as we get around the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd just like to thank all of our staff and our summer students who worked very hard on the Canada Day celebrations. I think that was wonderful. I really enjoyed that it was spread throughout our entire municipality this year. I also would like to mention that the Scottish Festival is happening this weekend. I know they are still searching for volunteers. So if you like the beautiful sounds of the pipes, that's the place to be this summer or this weekend. And lastly, can we make a motion to move the council meeting on August 14th to a different day? Yeah, okay.
Can't do it. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that Tiverton did a great job and anyone who supported it. I'm the president of the Lions Club and we had over 300 people for breakfast, and it was great to see Tiverton actually having a Canada Day, and I think that's even going to be bigger and better next year. The only other thing is the Knox Presbyterian Church is having their supper on the 11th. And tickets are still available for $25. So we'll just keep cheering on Amanda. Oh, sorry, Steinhoff Gray and I will keep cheering on Tiverton. So well done, Tiverton. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, the event on July 27th, 29th.
But you're gonna
Thank
be there
you.
the 27th?
No, I'm not gonna be there the 27th. I was following.
What's going on in
Mr. Kennedy's lead there. Sorry. Yes, you confused me. It's okay. No, we have a meeting coming up in a few days, actually. So I will actually provide more info at that meeting for that particular event. But the fundraiser, the concert that Councillor Kennedy was talking about, yes, you can get tickets off me or any other Lions member. I'm sure my father too. Everybody out in town knows him. Just hunt us down and grab some tickets.
How much are they?
It's good. They were cheaper than last one. It's $20. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a fundraiser for what in particular?
Oh. It's the All Wheels Park fundraiser.
Councillor.
Thank you through your mayor. I was beginning to wonder about the oxygen level in the room, the way everybody was getting a little giddy. Over the past weekend, I had a couple of good things to go to, which was breakfast, Tiverton Lions Club bill out at the Whitney Crawford Community Center there to support raising money for the splash pad. Also, I've lived in the municipality of Kincardine for over 30 years, and Doug helped motivate me. So first time in my life, I attended trivia night at the Kincardine Legion on Friday and had a fabulous time. And actually we've talked about sometimes about team building or related to council, where we could maybe get together and do something that would be fun and without furthering the business of council. And so a few of us have been having a few discussions on the side. Thanks.
My shout out goes to our manager of strategic initiatives, Lori Fiozzi, and her team, because she and Catherine and Nicole and others were flying around organizing parades that made Tiverton successful and flag raisings that made the Canada Day celebration successful, unveiling a plaque, tribute to Eldon Humphrey, arranging the games. So thank you to you, Ms. Fiozzi, and your team. You have done us proud.
And the weather people.
The weather, you arranged that too. You did very well. So, CEO.
Just have a brief announcement. I got a communication on Friday and we can include it in next week's agenda package, but just because it takes place between July 1st and July the 17th, I wanted to make you aware. So it's from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Environmental Office, and they will be practicing and exercising their Indigenous rights by their water walk. So it's a walk across their territory between those dates, July the 1st and July the 17th. And they do encourage and welcome leaders and community members to join their journey and learn more about San territory and the culture. So I just wanted to share that information with you.
And the CEO just confirmed that that will be forwarded to us, so we'll get that information. All right, we have a motion to move it to closed session. Clerk, please.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that council move into closed meeting for the purpose of considering litigation or potential litigation, including matter before administrative tribunals, 2 human resources matters pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion.
Heard the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. All right, so we have a 5-minute break just till people are vacating and preparing for the next meeting.